Is there any trust left between the two major parties, or is that just done?
Oh, no, there's a lot of trust. I mean, the people who govern in Washington understand the need to work across the aisle to get major pieces of legislation through. Right now we're working on something called the Financial Reform Bill, which is incredibly complex. And there's a lot of across-the-aisle work being done on it. It's not turning out that well, but
I'm surprised that
everybody's making an effort. I think maybe senior is the wrong term, but at the level of that Jeanne and I work at, which is in the Senate amongst people who are really very good people. I mean, the people who represent, I'm leaving so I can say this, but the people who represent us in the Senate and in the House are really dedicated people who are interested in making government work better and work well. And almost all of them, at least in the Senate, there's a real willingness to go across the aisle and at least talk, if not actually work, to try to get things done. And sometimes it doesn't work out, like in the health care bill, but in most instances it does. There is ability to find that place where you don't have to give up your principles, but you can make progress.
The end of bipartisanship, Senator Shaheen? Is there a center left anywhere in American politics?
Well, there is, and I think most legislation ultimately gets done in the center. And, one of the things that Judd and I do is work very closely together. We don't vote the same way on a lot of things, but we work very closely because that's in the best interests of the people of New Hampshire, and our offices talk on a regular basis. And if I'm working on an issue that I think he's going to be concerned about, we let him know, and I think vice versa. So I think people in New Hampshire are well served when we work closely together in their interest.
We actually have a breakfast. We used to it'll start up again, but it's a bipartisan breakfast every Tuesday, and there would be probably 20 people would show up, and it was totally bipartisan. It was run by Lamar Alexander and Senator Lieberman, and now there's a bipartisan cheese and crackers event on Thursday afternoon.
That's right.
And people show up, and it's because most people in the Senate understand you really can't get anything done unless you are able to reach across the aisle, because first off, it takes 60 votes, which is a good idea, and secondly, the vote that's with you today, that's against you today, is the vote you're going to need tomorrow. So you cannot personalize any of these votes, even though you may hold the issue, be really into the issue and take it very intensely. If you personalize a vote, you're finished in the Senate. You just can't do it. You've got to be able to, sort of like a lawyer, take a case and move on.
Now, I know you're biased, but is the House the problem then? Is that what you're saying?
The House is different.
Is that the source of all the rancor? Go ahead,
Senator
Senator
what we
Shaheen.
haven't talked about, though, Laura, and maybe this was different when you started, Judd, but people who have been around the Senate for a long time, or the House, tell me that it used to be that people moved their families to Washington, that they socialized together over the weekend, that they didn't fly home every weekend, and they then developed a level of trust and a relationship that made it easier to work together. And I do think that is challenging today because people go home, or most people go home every weekend, and so you don't develop a relationship in the same way that they used to do. And I would say that one of the positive things about the Senate that I like is the fact that the women senators get together 4 times a year, Republican and Democrat. We get together for dinner, and we have great conversations, and it's really, I think, added to our ability to work together.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall in those conversations. It's interesting what you say about people not hanging around in Washington. People say that in New Hampshire, too, about when the old highway... Was it the Highway Hotel?
Yes. Hotel, sure.
When that closed, they paint pictures of Republicans and Democratic lawmakers drinking and sitting around the piano and becoming friends. Do you see that, Senator Gregg, what Senator Shaheen talks about? People do go home. There's that responsibility to show your face in the home state, but that degrades the quality of friendships that you have within the Beltway.
I think that's probably true. Certainly in the House it's true. You asked, is the House the problem? No, the House isn't the problem. The House is just an entirely different institution, because the majority in the House has autocratic control. They can do anything they want because they have a rules committee. And the rule, you could take a bill to the floor of the House, the most complicated bill in the world, the most difficult bill in the world, and they can pass a rule that says we'll debate it for an hour and there'll be no amendments. It's an autocracy over there run by the Speaker, whoever the Speaker is, whether it's a Republican Speaker or a Democratic Speaker. So they have it's an entirely different system. And that's why you need the Senate to be the saucer into which the hot coffee is poured. But the House isn't the problem. It's just institutionally structured differently.
Here's a great last question for you from our audience again. This person says, so, you two are terrific. Are you willing to take your show on the road and educate others about civility?
Well, we'll go to MSNBC and then to Fox.
Yeah.